Hi, I'm Joe, and thank you for taking the time to stop by and watch these videos. We're doing a little bit of a different thing here, a series of micro lessons. It's really just me, I don't know why I say we. It's doing micro lessons, which are very basic, short, and quick lessons on specific topics. In this case here, I'm taking a look at what would be the quickest path to get you up to speed to play songs on the guitar. Maybe you have a favorite song that you want to learn and sing along to. Well, what would be the quickest path that you would need, or the building blocks that you would need to get started to do that? The first step is obviously learning your chord shapes that you'll need. And when you're identifying the chord shapes, make sure you're also identifying the root and where that is in the chord. That'll become in handy later on, especially when you need to switch keys and play songs in different keys. I think the first 4 chords, though, that you should learn would be the G major, the C major, the E minor, and the D chord. And the reason for this I'll share a little bit later on, but getting those shapes down, G, C, E minor, and D, will serve you very well. You can play literally thousands of songs with just knowing those chords. So after you get those chord shapes memorized, the trick next is to do what I call chord moves, and that's switching in between the 2 chords. So you would want to practice switching from the G, going to the C, etc. and so forth, and get those chord moves as smooth as possible, because when you're playing a song, obviously, when the chords change, you need to be able to move them in time, and so there's not this big break before you get to the next chord. So get those basic chord moves down. And you might want to start off with just basic strumming patterns. That would be the third thing to learn. But honestly, you can just start off with something called hold notes and just holding them out and sing to your favorite song. When I find myself in times of trouble. You know, you could just basically hold the chords. You don't have to do any fancy strumming or rhythm patterns. But start even just with whole notes maybe, or you can do quarter notes. Or eighth notes, or whatever they may be, but just get some basic strumming pattern down. So now we have the basic building blocks so far of the chord shapes. We're now getting used to chord moves, switching in between the chords. We've identified where the roots are of those chords, and we have a basic strumming pattern, something that we're just going to use to carry us through rhythmically through the song. Now, when you have those down, now those 4 specific chords that I gave you are, again, in thousands of songs, and why I did that is the order in which you play them is called a chord progression, and the pattern that you'll be basically using. So there's so many famous songs that are written in just a handful of chord progressions. And what is a chord progression? A chord progression basically is when you pick a key, let's say we're in the key of G, and we say, okay, we're going to play the G chord, going to the C chord, going to the E minor chord, going to the D chord. That is a chord progression, and it's built off of the G major scale. So every degree of that scale I can build a chord off of. And because it's built off of a degree of a scale, we can name the chords accordingly. So when we play the G chord, we would say that's the 1 chord. When we play the C chord, that would be the 4 chord. Why? Because we would walk up, and that would be the 4th degree in the scale, the G scale. So it would be G, A, B, C. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's our 4 chord. D would be our 5 chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. G, A, B, C, D. That's our 5 chord. And if we go up to the 6 chord, which would be G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we end up on E. So E minor is the 6th chord. So when we're playing this progression here, we would be saying we're playing the 1 chord, to the 4 chord, to the 6 chord, to the 5 chord. Now again, there's very famous chord progressions that you can learn. The first one would be the 1, 5, 6, 4. I'm sure that sounds familiar to you. And that's a very famous chord progression. Tons of songs have been written with that one. Another variation, again using just the same 4 chords that you learned before, would be the 1, 6, 4, 5. And that might be the most famous version. Of that would be something that you would hear maybe in the 50s. So I'm sure you've heard that progression, but it's more modernized as well now. Another famous one would be 6, 4, 1, and 5. Again, I'm just using the same 4 chord shapes that I wanted you to kind of learn first. The last one would be maybe the 1, 4, 6, 5. Now with just those 4 chord progressions, again, you could literally play thousands of songs. You can look up on YouTube, there's actually a collage or a medley, I should say, of even, I think it was a comedic group that was playing tons of hit songs using the same exact chord progression. It's actually pretty funny, but it actually illustrates the point that just knowing these 4 chords, G, C, E minor, and D, and then knowing the different chord progressions, the most common ones, the 1, 5, 6, 4, or the 1, 6, 4, 5, or the 6, 4, 1, 5, or the 1, 4, 6, 5, those different chord progressions can get you through literally playing, again, thousands of songs. Now you might say to yourself, well, Joe, that's great, but if I'm only playing the key G, maybe I can't sing in that key, or the song's in a different key. Well, that's where the power of a capo comes in. And if you're not familiar with what that is, capo, basically, you can put on your guitar and use your same exact chord shapes that you've already learned. Again, that G shape, C shape, E minor shape, and D, and now you're playing a completely different key. So it doesn't really matter. And again, these 4 chord shapes will work with the magic of a capo. So that's it really. That was just an approach again. Just to recap, learn your basic chord shapes, then focus on the G, the C, the E minor, and D chord of those shapes. Maybe identify where the roots are, because again, if you need to switch keys and use a capo, if you know that when you're playing the G shape here, that this is the root note, well, now that I know I'm playing here, I know exactly what key I'm in, which is happen to be B flat. You can then also think about moving and practicing moving between the chords, which is those chord moves that I talked about earlier, just basically getting used to the different strumming patterns. As a matter of fact, my first series of videos basically were 2 chord combinations that were really good chord moves to get underneath your fingers. So I'll put a link in the description below for that playlist if you want to take a look at those. There's also practice tracks that go along with all of those, so you can practice along with a steady beat to make sure that your rhythm is solid. We talked a little bit about the next thing you might want to come up with, just a basic rhythm pattern or strumming pattern. But again, honestly, you could just use whole notes just to get started singing along or playing your favorite songs. And the other thing then to do is take those chords, those 4 chords that I gave you, and start to put them in those chord progressions, in those different patterns that I shared with you. Then you'll really start to unlock and hear probably your favorite songs that you know use those progressions. It'll be very eye-opening, I'm sure, for you. And again, the last step might be, if you want to, go ahead and invest in a capo so you can move these chord shapes up and down the neck. Well, that's it for now. I hope that you found some value in this video. If you did, please do me a favor, maybe consider supporting the channel for free by subscribing down below, hit the like button, and knock on the bell and you'll be notified when the next video comes out. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day.